feel like that's any better?
Well, you tell me. I don't know if you can hear my voice a little
No,
better now.
I can hear your voice. I could hear your voice before, but it was kind of it was going in and out a little bit.
Right. Okay. Hopefully it's
Yeah,
better
and
now.
there's definitely a delay, but I don't think that must be because you're on the other side of the world. Just what I think.
It could be like because before I was just on Wi-Fi and I was in kind of a bad part of the house, like the connection
Oh,
wasn't that
okay.
great. I just moved and I put on Ethernet, so it should be fine basically. If it is like on a delay, I think it's maybe StreamYard's playing up or something.
Oh, it could be. That's true. It might be. I wish I had I mean, I'm getting 80 on this computer. It's wireless, but our network speed is 200. So it should be fine, but every once in a while, I've told my daughter, you are not allowed to stream games right now. You can't, nobody do anything on the internet right now.
I had a total nightmare with it a couple of weeks ago. I was trying to do a bit of streaming while I was playing a game online,
Yeah.
and it just kept dying on me. It was
Oh.
before I changed all my setup, and every time it reset, it sent out a new notification to all my subscribers, and so they were getting like bombarded with
Yeah.
notifications.
Yeah.
And I think I lost like 1,000 subscribers from that.
Oh, really? Did they really leave you because of that?
Just I don't blame them. Like they maybe came back. I mean, it's fine now, but yeah, just
Oh,
a total balls up. And so after that experience, I was like, right, I need someone in. So I got a broadband engineer in. We installed a bunch of Ethernet cables, and yeah,
oh, nice.
basically, yeah, more or less sorted it out. So
Yeah,
hopefully that'll never happen.
Ethernet's good. I like Ethernet the best, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. I got my routers in the other room back there and nice wireless. I've got a little satellite here. So I'm hoping it holds up. It should do okay, but watch with my luck. It'll crap out in the middle of this discussion. Anyway, so, okay, sort of starting over-ish. Getting the obligatory small talk out of the way. How's the weather there?
Oh well, yeah, it's Scotland. It's December. Although weirdly, I will say it's kind of warm. So it's unseasonably warm today. So that's not too bad. We're doing
Well,
all right. What about you?
what do you consider warm though?
Well, yeah, anything above freezing temperature is warm for a
Well,
Scottish person. So yeah,
so
we're the
what,
kind of people we walk around in t-shirts in December. It's great.
oh, yeah. That's like my daughter. She's like that. Freezing weather and she's outside in her t-shirt and shorts. What in the world? Here it's like mid 40s here right now. But we're in a weird part of the country where we're in the South, if you can't tell by my accent, and we'll have like a day where it'll be 69 and then the next day it'll be 35. This time of
Mm,
year it's crazy. It's so annoying. I hate it. Hate this time
yeah.
of year.
The
But
the good thing about living where I do is like we're kind of close to the sea, and so it never really gets that cold in the wintertime, but it doesn't get that hot in the summer either. So it's just kind of meh in between. And
what
it rains a lot.
I can imagine, I always picture when I think of Scotland and England, I just think of gray and rainy. However, with Scotland, no, that's Ireland. I think of green.
Yeah.
Like green fields and green trees everywhere. But what's the hottest it gets in the summer? Like, or what's the typical for the summer there?
Well, I mean, I'm because I don't know Fahrenheit. It would have to be Celsius. Like
Oh,
for
geez.
us, it would be like you know low 20s in Celsius would be like a typical Scottish summer's day. Like it can get up to like 27, 28. Like we had a real heat wave. I think it was last summer where we just had like a month where it didn't rain at all. It was
Oh,
uncanny.
dang. Right,
And
right.
then my friends and I, we said we were going to go hill walking that day. So we went over to Edinburgh, got the train over. We were getting ready to go up into the hills, and it pissed with rain that day. That was the first time it had rained in a month, and it was
Of
that
course.
particular day. It was
Right.
amazing.
Because it knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I looked and it looks like 20 Celsius is about 68 Fahrenheit. So not really super warm, but not really cold either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Anyway, well, I'm curious about the way the weather is in other parts of the world because being on YouTube and you interact with people all over the place, and I've got people from Australia and people from Belgium and Brussels, and and like over there in Thailand, Taiwan. So I'm always like, what's the weather like?
Yeah.
I find it
I
fascinating.
I hate talking to Australians at this time of year. Like it's the height of summer for them, and they are just basking in the sun all day. I
Right.
hate them.
Those butts. Anyway, okay. Well, I'm a terrible interviewer. I just basically like to talk and just sort of ask questions and see where the discussion takes us. But I've got a whole lot of stuff written down. And one of the first ones I've got on my list to ask you is, have you ever thought of doing, or have you yet done, I don't think you have, a collab with Dave Cullen,
Oh,
like about movies and stuff?
no, I haven't actually. I know he's aware of me. Like I think he's referenced me a couple of times in some of his videos, and I've done the same with him. And you kind of do that sometimes with
Yeah.
YouTubers. You like
Yes,
play
you
video
do.
tag, and it's like, oh, I've
Yeah.
mentioned you, you've mentioned me, we know
Right,
about
right.
each other.
Yeah, you do.
I actually haven't been able to get in contact with him because
Oh, really?
he's not on Twitter, and I don't think he's got a business email address, so I'm not quite sure how to get hold of him.
Oh,
I mean, I
so there
know like because I know he does a lot of political stuff and social commentary. Like he's definitely
he
done
does.
movie reviews, and I
Yeah.
think that's on the Dave Cullen show rather than his main channel.
Instead of
But
computing forever.
yeah, but it'd be good to talk to him. Like I know he's really into Star Trek and all that stuff, so it'd be cool to get his perspective sometime.
I could see you guys hanging out, and I think that you would have a lot that you would agree on because he seems to be pretty like-minded as far as things like good storytelling goes. Because I've seen some of his movie reviews, and they're pretty spot on. And so are you. I mean, I may disagree with some of your dislike for some films that I hold dear to my heart, but um, I like the way you put together your thoughts because, as you were saying on your interview with the Okon brothers, you were saying something about how people say to you, well, they knew something was wrong, but like you put it into words good. You have a
Mhm.
good way of expressing it. And I'm kind of like that, except I can put it into words. I just don't make it sound as good as you do. That's why I like that's why I like your reviews. I mean,
Well,
you're
that's
pretty.
because you're not. That's because you're not drunk enough when you're doing your reviews. You see.
Yes, I don't pull out the alcohol until I'm ready to settle down for the day and start editing videos. That's when I pull them out. I do my filming late at night, like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, and half
Yeah.
the time I'm so tired just after a day of editing, doing audiobook proofing and stuff like that, and I'm just yawning and doing like this. So I don't know. Alcohol would probably just make me fall right asleep if I did that. So
Yeah.
I can't do that.
But
Yeah.
no, going back to the point you made there, it's yeah, a lot of people, that's some of the feedback that I've had from people where it's like I could sense that something wasn't right about this movie and it wasn't making me happy or it wasn't giving me that dramatic experience that I wanted,
Hmm.
but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And you were able to articulate it, and that's great to hear because like once they recognize some of the things that are missing, they'll know what to look for next time, and they'll then have that hopefully that better understanding of what works in storytelling and what doesn't.
Right.
So you know
Well, as someone who's sort of involved, well, I am involved in the book industry in a sense. I mean, I wanted to be a writer. I went to school for IT. I think you have an IT background as well. Um, I think I saw that somewhere, maybe in one of your books. I can't.
I got my degree in IT and then I went into web
Yeah.
design.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of sort of similar. So I understand the basics of storytelling, and I can I know when I'm hearing a good story. I also know when I'm hearing something that isn't sitting right with me, and I can't think of really good ways to express it. And you do it in a very entertaining way. Obviously, you built this whole persona around the drinker, which is so much fun to listen to. I think the first video of yours I saw, my son sent it to me, and I think it was a video you were doing about it was something that you were being real snarky about. Well, you were always snarky on those videos, but you're being snarky about something about women in movies.
Hmm.
Um, and I can't remember the title of it, but it was something along the lines of, so you know how nowadays they act like, oh, this is the first time we've ever had this wonderful heroine in a movie, and this is the first time. And then when people criticize said heroine, Captain Marvel, um, they they automatically say, well, it's because you don't like women, or you're whatever, you're sexist or whatever.
Hmm.
And when the reality is, no, we've had plenty of really well written action or female heroes in movies, but it's like you're doing it wrong right now. Like you said, when you were talking with the Okon brothers, that for the past few years, it's like it's just gone to crap. I swear, it's so
Hmm.
annoying.
Yeah, and it's 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 an interesting topic then to explore, like, where it's going wrong and how it's been done badly. And I've done a few videos where I've tried to do like the drinker fixes on characters like
Right,
Captain
I've seen
Marvel
some of those.
or
Yeah,
Ray, and it gives you an opportunity to explore what's exactly wrong with that character and why it's wrong and why it doesn't work
right.
very well, and then how you can fix it by doing relatively simple things just to humanize them and give them more flaws and more human frailties, like people have, and then
Yeah,
that makes them more engaging characters.
exactly.
And yeah, the problems that they're having at the moment with the writing of characters like that is that they try to make them these like paragons of virtue,
Yeah,
that they think everyone's going to look up to, but they forget that the strength of a character isn't in their ability to do things. It's their ability to overcome their weaknesses, and
exactly.
that's what makes it interesting. But if you don't
Right.
have any weaknesses to begin with, you don't have a character.
Well, it's like a lot of the writing these days is being done by elementary school kids. Like, what are you, like fantasy type writing? Like you got Mary Sue's all over the place. It makes for some really boring stories, and it makes for boring characters. And personally, to me, it makes for unlikable characters, I think.
Yes. Yeah, so
So,
it goes back to what I was saying there. If the character doesn't have a struggle to overcome, they don't have any flaws or weaknesses, then there's nothing to really latch onto. They
mm-mm,
just become like a cardboard cutout of a person just
right.
winning at everything, and that's not interesting for anyone to watch.
No.
So that's kind of the where they're going wrong, and this kind of problem filters through to the antagonists in movies now as well, because they don't want to give the hero any challenges. The antagonists become weak and kind of useless and ineffective, and so again, there's nothing there for you to get invested in and to either cheer for or cheer against,
Right.
because
Exactly.
there's no real substance to them. And
Yep.
so yeah, it feels very much like it's written for children, where everything's just really simplified and there's no real adult complexity or nuance like you would get, or that you used to get with writing and characters. So
Well, bless you for subjecting yourself to some of the stuff you've subjected yourself to, because there's no way in there's no way in Hades I'm going to watch any of the Batwoman episodes, and yet you've sort of muddled through at least one of them, I think. And there was something else. Oh, Birds of Prey. I was vaguely interested in that, but the problem is, Margot Robbie. I don't know. It's not Margot. It's the character Harley Quinn. I don't care for Harley Quinn. She got tired really quick in the animated show for me, and I don't know how much of that is just the way her character is or her voice. Just-
I mean, I'm no expert obviously in American accents, but like even I can tell that her accent is all over the place. Like sometimes it's really strong New York, sometimes it's
yeah,
something completely different, and it's like, okay, I know Margot Robbie is Australian, but she's a professional actress. She should have vocal coaches to help her with this stuff.
right.
Um,
Yeah, I only
but
saw her
but
in Suicide Squad as
yeah,
Harley.
but I think beyond that though, like the character's just not very interesting, and
Mhm.
you know, her whole thing is pretty much she's crazy. She could do anything at any moment. It's like, okay, but like, why? I don't know what her motivation is. Then there's nothing
Right.
consistent about her because she's insane, and so
Right.
it doesn't make for a great protagonist of a movie.
No,
And
I mean
particularly,
it wears thin after a few minutes. It's just maybe she'd be funny for a side character.
yeah,
You know.
it's really like they were trying to replicate the success of something like Deadpool, where it's constant gags, constant
Yeah.
jokes, really anarchic humor, and it's meant to be really irreverent. But the thing is, like Ryan Reynolds is kind of a natural comedian, and he's really good at that stuff, and it was better written. Like Deadpool was a better written character than Harley Quinn, so
Right.
it just felt like a cheap knockoff of that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think about it that way, but that makes sense. But speaking of writing and just writing good characters, was the Ryan Drake novel your very first full length published novel? The first one?
It was, yes, it was the first one I got published. I'd written another one before that, but it didn't quite make it, so that then was my second one.
Have you tried to return to the other one?
Well, what I did was ultimately I took a lot of the key elements from that and repurposed them
Oh, okay.
for other books in the series. So it was like almost cannibalism. So it kind of, that
Yeah.
first book almost got then expanded out and made much more complex and became the Ryan Drake series almost. I took the bits that worked and used them. So yeah, it's
Okay,
been
that makes sense.
reused.
So it was a similar type of genre, a similar type of storyline?
Yeah, very similar. So it
Okay.
was, the most of the prototype characters were there. Like there was an equivalent to Ryan Drake. There was something broadly similar to Anya in it. Some of the
Mhm.
backstory elements were the same, and yeah, like it's almost like the whole story of the Ryan Drake series was essentially that book just made much more complex, and there was other things that happened in between. But so yeah, I'm kind of glad that that one didn't make it, because then it allowed the Ryan Drake series to be what it is, like much more
Right.
complex and interesting, I think. But
It is interesting.
it's
Sorry, go
always
ahead, I interrupted.
yeah, writing is sometimes a lesson in like experimentation. And so you try some things, you think they might work, maybe they don't quite cut it, and so you learn from that, and you take the bits that did work and that were really effective, you drop the things that were the weaknesses, and eventually you produce something that people will like, and that's what I guess I've been able to do with my work.
Well, I can't help but imagine that since your YouTube channel has exploded, so have your book sales.
It doesn't hurt. I'll,
No, it
I'll put it that way.
doesn't hurt. I can imagine it doesn't, because it took me a little bit to. I didn't realize right away that you were a writer. I don't know that it just didn't. You an author. It just didn't sink in, and then by the time I realized you were, and I looked at your stuff, and I was like, oh, this looks like something I'd really like to listen to. And then later I was like, this just sounds like stuff I'd really like to work on. And so then that's when it popped in my head to ask you about the audiobooks. And by then it was too late. Someone else was already doing it. I was like, dang it.
Yeah.
So if you ever have another series that you're thinking about doing, just hit us up. We'll work on the audiobook for you. That'd be a
Yeah,
lot of fun.
I'll be in touch. But no, with the books, like it was something that it almost didn't occur to me to mention them in the context of my YouTube channel for a long time, because I just
Yeah.
saw them as two completely separate worlds, and
Yep.
I
Yep.
didn't see much of a crossover there. People were
Right.
there to see me talk about movies. They didn't care if I had written books or anything like that. But then, eventually I thought, okay, well, I'll mention it a little bit and just see if people have any sort of interest. And it seems like they have. So, it's been great. Like every time I do a stream or anything like that, people will be there saying, I got your latest book, or I bought Redemption, or whatever it might be. And
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it, hopefully. So that's
Well,
good.
I bought your book. That's my Terminator notification. Hold on.
Nice.
Terminator 2. I am obsessed with Terminator 2. As you can tell by my background, my shirt, the thumbs up. My notification is the
Yeah.
Terminator, the scene where he's walking through the place and getting ready to shoot all the police cars. I saw bits and pieces of the discussion you did about that with somebody. I can't remember who it was, but I
Oh, it
think
was
it was
Mahler. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I was so jealous. I'm like, I want to jump in here and just talk all about it as well, because that movie to me, Terminator 2 to me, I've made no secret about it. That's like my favorite movie of all time. I absolutely love that film, and nothing has been able to replace it. Nothing at all. Not even Wonder Woman. And I love Wonder Woman. But yeah, so I was like, if you ever make a video kind of like telling us everything wrong with Terminator 2, I'm not going to watch it.
To be honest,
So
it'd be a very short video in that case, because yeah, it's one of those films that I would struggle to criticize. Like it would have to be a drinker recommends or nothing.
Yeah, do a
It's
drink
just
recommend.
it's just a fantastic film. Like when I was even talking with Mahler about it, like we were both just getting so enthused, like reliving all these like iconic
Right,
scenes, the great writing, the thought that was put into it, the atmosphere of
exactly.
the whole thing. Yeah,
It's
just
just
fantastic.
so good. It's like it's the perfect blend of action and then downtime and then dramatic emotion, and just what they did with Sarah Connor from the first movie to the second, and how Arnold comes in and she's having all these very conflicting emotions dealing with the fact that now he's not a killer, he's a protector, and it's just I love and nowadays the only way I watch it is the extended cut. Have you seen that one?
Yes, yes. We kind of talked about that in the stream. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot of
obviously if
elements
I'd
that.
seen all 4 hours, I would have heard you say that. Sorry about that. Try
No,
not to
no,
be
it's fine.
repetitious.
Yeah, some of the special effects shots, like when they're opening up his head to get into the chip and
Mhm.
reset it, like why did you cut that out of the film? It's so cool.
Well, not only that, but it's vital to the story. I don't know why they did that because, well, not also number two, her twin sister comes in and is doing that part, which was all the setup they had to do to get that to working right. But it's important that the viewer knows that they took the chip out and flipped the switch so that he can then, start to make the decisions he makes later on.
Yeah,
Otherwise, I guess you kind of can fill in the blanks and think, well, I guess he sort of did it on his own, but they had already been talking about the fact that when they come off the assembly line, the switch is like in one position so that they can't do their own thinking.
yeah,
So then all of a sudden we're supposed to realize that he's managed to do his own thinking at the end. How can that be when they left out that whole scene, which would fill it all in? I don't know
yeah.
why they
I
did
can
that.
only assume it was purely an issue of pace because that whole sequence comes during a pretty lengthy lull in the action, and I guess they
Right.
just didn't want to extend it by like an extra 5 or 6 minutes. So,
Yeah, they're
but
holed
it
up
is a
in the
shame.
garage. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was probably the one that they. Oh, another thing that was cut out of the first Terminator. I don't know if you know this. Maybe you do. I guess like people that are really into these movies know this. But at the end of the first Terminator, when they put her in the ambulance, did you hear about this?
Um, don't think so.
Okay, this is really cool. And they totally should not have taken it out, but maybe he didn't know that he was going to make a second one. They put her in the ambulance, and the camera pans away from the ambulance and pans up to the building where they had that big, battle at the end in the factory,
Yeah.
and it's like it's Cyberdyne.
Ah, okay.
Why did they
That
take
that
that out?
that would have been very cool, actually.
Right? That whole loop thing just blows my mind. I love time travel stuff. It's just really fun to think about
Hmm.
the what ifs and how you can change things. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to segue off into Terminator, but I can't hardly help it because it's just such a fun film. But I was going to ask you about your writing process, and I know that you're not a pantser, you're a plotter. I got
Hmm.
that much from the Okon Brothers. I tried to rewatch the interview because I'm trying to stay away from asking you the same types of questions. But so I like to know about tech stuff. So what software do you use when you write?
Just for actually writing, just Microsoft Word, I guess.
Just
Like,
Microsoft Word. So you don't use anything like
yeah,
Scrivener or
no, no, nothing fancy. Like, I just need something that will like let me put text on a
yeah.
screen. Like, I could do it in
Yeah.
WordPad, I suppose, if I had to.
Yeah, well, yeah. Do you so when you write your first draft of a novel, do you go back through and then revise it in any way, or do you just shuttle it off to the editor, or
Yeah.
and then
Uh,
they get back to you?
okay, so what I'll do is I will generally just go start to finish. I very rarely will stop halfway through to go back and make changes because I don't like to break the flow. So I
Hmm.
kind of like to get it done and get to the end. And like if there are things that I realize I'm going to have to change, I'll just make a mental note of it. And then I will do one sort of editorial pass through it where I will go back and change all the things that I remembered as I was going,
Yeah.
and get it to a point where I'm pretty happy with it. And so then it gets sent off to the editors, and
Okay.
they
And
will then come back with their recommendations to me.
And what type of editing? So I'm a manuscript editor as well. So I'm always curious to hear about how other people do the thing. What type of editing does your editor do? Do they do any sort of suggestions for what you should do with the storyline, or do they just purely fix any typos or grammar issues or punctuation or stuff like that?
There's three stages to it, I guess. The first stage is the big one where they do all the structural stuff. So if there's
Mm-hmm.
any aspect of the storyline that they're not keen on, or they think you should change, or maybe a scene that could come out, for pacing issues, they always want to cut it down. Like that's what editors love to do, is cut down the
Yeah,
length of your book.
yeah, it's
And
fun.
whereas writers,
It's fun.
right, yeah, well, it's
You
always
can
this
bleed it all
constant
over.
war. They want it as
Yeah,
lean and concise as possible.
yeah.
Like authors tend to want it to be as rich and detailed as possible, and so it's a constant battle. But yeah, they'll make their recommendations. We'll usually have a couple of phone calls just to go over what they've said. I'll then make whatever changes we agree upon, and once that's complete, then it goes to like the proofreading stage, where someone will go through with a bit more of
Mm-hmm.
a fine-tooth comb just to look scene to scene. Does all of this make sense? Are you contradicting yourself at any point? And then the last stage is just pretty much like you say, just spelling, grammar, all those little tiny things, that I don't even need any input on that one. They can just change things as they go because it'll be so
Right.
small.
Do you send it out to beta readers afterwards?
No, no,
No, you just
no.
it's good to go. And
It's
yeah,
me and my editor, and that's essentially it. And yeah, I never really felt the need for beta readers. And to be honest, like I don't even communicate with them at all during the writing process. Like I think some authors, they like to have a constant back and forth with their editor as they're writing the thing and almost looking for advice the whole way through.
I
Whereas with
can
me, I'm
handle
like, yeah, you're basically not going to hear from me for 6 months, and then I'll just deliver you a finished manuscript. So,
Oh,
uh,
so
they
it
trust
takes.
me now, so it's okay.
Oh, that's good, right? It makes you feel accomplished that they trust you enough to leave you alone for
Yeah.
that long, right? So it takes you about 6 months. Is that from plotting to finish, or just the beginning of writing to the end?
Yeah, plotting to finish. It doesn't take me that long to plot the thing, like a couple of weeks probably, and that'll be
Yeah,
it.
you have to kind of try to hammer out all the details, possible plot holes, and things like that. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, one of the things that I really liked about I got the first book right after I had messaged you about possibly, coming on here for an interview. I got the first book, and then I went ahead and just, because you can add on the audiobook. So I did that, and the audiobook of Ryan Drake #1 is the first audiobook that I have listened to for pleasure in well over a year and a half. And that's
Wow.
really saying something, I must tell you, because I work in the audiobook industry, as you know already. And after like several hours of being plugged in, that's like I just don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to hear anymore. If I'm going to listen to something, I'll listen to a true crime podcast or something like that. But so Ryan Drake, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to read this book. I'm going to be prepared so I know what the heck I'm even talking about when I talk about the first book at least. And I listened to the first book. I mean, I had it, I would go back and forth reading and listening. And one thing that I really liked about the first book, like I said, that's the only one I've read, is that the side characters themselves are interesting too. They've got a bit of depth to them. They're not just throwaway characters. Like the German guy, was he German or Austrian? I can't remember.
He's German, yeah, Dietrich.
German. Dietrich, yeah. He's he sort of starts to he's kind of set up as being one of the protagonists that you're just going to consistently, I mean, antagonists that you're going to consistently not like, but then he's got these different shades of gray and levels to him that make him more interesting, and he's not quite a butthole as you think he's going to be the whole way through, but he doesn't turn around and become like Drake's bestest friend ever either. So they still have that, sort of friction. I don't know if he continues. Does he show up in any of the other books?
He
The other
does,
things?
yes.
Okay,
He
all
does
right.
show up, yeah.
Okay, no spoilers. I just wasn't sure
Okay.
how many of these characters carry through to the other. Okay, one spoiler. Does Anya show up again? I have a feeling she will.
She will, yeah, she does.
Okay.
She becomes quite important as the
Oh,
series
okay.
progresses. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I like also that there's not the typical. So you know how in action movies and stories, a lot of times characters will make the same type of decision over and over. But a lot of times with this book, and also with a book I'm listening to right now, because now I'm back to listening to books for pleasure, is Orphan X. And I like this book as well because it takes these diversions you don't necessarily expect. Like you think, oh, they're going to do such and such, and then they don't. It goes completely the opposite way, which I like that. I like the unexpected if it makes sense. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So anyway,
And
so
with
yeah,
the point you were making about supporting characters and things, yeah, like those are the characters that I always find most interesting in a story. And as a writer, they're the ones that you can have the most fun with, because
right.
with the protagonist, with the hero, you're kind of, you have this responsibility to make them obviously likable so that people will attach themselves to them. But the result is
Yeah,
you have to play it a little bit safe with them, and they have
right.
to have certain characteristics that people look for, and they're not to say they're generic, but there's certain things that they're always going to have. Whereas with the supporting characters, you're free to do whatever you want, and so you can take a lot of risks with them or take them in interesting directions. And I love
Yeah,
to just misdirect people with characters like that, like
yeah,
Dietrich being a good example. You kind of think he's eventually going to become a liability, and he's going to get someone killed, or he's going to betray them in some way. Actually,
yeah,
he finds his own kind of redemption in the course of the story, and that's just
yeah.
like an interesting thing to do, I think.
Yeah, I really appreciated that, and I'm looking forward to continuing the series. And I'm sure I'll like, because the type of book that you wrote is exactly the type of book that I enjoy. So I had a feeling I would like it, but I go in there with a very super critical ear and eye as I'm
Hmm.
reading and listening, because that's just what I do. But I was very pleased with how it all ended up, and look forward to continuing the rest of the series. When you research locations, because you had the characters in the first book, like when he takes off with Anya, and they're running down south basically, and they're passing through several states, one of which is mine. How did you research? I mean, do you just go by what you know about some of these states in the movies or books, or did you do like Google Maps and go traveling through some of the towns? I've done that before,
Yeah,
to
so it's a
get a
mixture.
handle on.
So like there's certain states in America that I've just been to, and I kind of know what they're
Oh, okay.
like,
You've been here.
which is,
Okay, I didn't know that.
oh
I was
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
ask
I've
you.
been
I
to
was gonna ask
America.
you
No, yeah, I've been there a bunch of times, and like love going to America. Is great.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's a mixture of that, and then things like Google Maps, like you say, because
Mhm.
you can get it down to the level where you're at Street View, and you can drive yourself down streets that they're going to go down, or you can take
Right.
yourself through towns that they're going to pass through, and it's like, oh, okay, so if they went to this gas station, what would the layout of the land look like around them? Things like that. It's
Google
very,
Maps is
very
great.
useful.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, absolutely. The my brother, I worked on my brother's two books, and the first book, part of it took place in, I know I'm going to butcher the name, Pripyat, the little town next to Chernobyl, and it's all
Interesting you
abandoned.
should say that. Because
What?
one of my I've got a novella. Like I've done two Ryan Drake novellas as well, and one of them is set in Pripyat.
Did you use Google Maps? Because
I
I
did,
did.
yeah, because I can't go there right now. So yeah,
No, right.
but yeah, I used it so that I could see, like, if I wanted to get the characters through some of the big landmarks, like the Ferris wheel, the
Yep.
abandoned
The little play yard.
hotel,
Yep.
yeah, and all that stuff. Like, what direction would I have them come in from? What would they see along the way? Because I wanted to try and be as accurate as I could, and even how
Exactly.
long would it take them to cover that sort of distance on foot?
Uh-huh.
Like all those kind of things, and it just, yeah, it's satisfying to do, and like for people who read it, like it's a little bit more authentic, I guess.
Yeah, it makes you're not just throwing words together. You actually have an idea of what the heck you're talking about. And Google Maps is it's wonderful. Yeah, I took a stroll through various parts of that little city, and it's so eerie. But exactly, the Ferris wheel, the little roundy merry-go, not, it's not a merry, I don't know what you call those things. It goes around, some swings and seesaws. It was, but it helped to add authenticity, even though I never had to step foot in there. Thank goodness. I don't think I ever would. But anyway, So I was just wondering about that as you had the characters going through various places in the U.S. What states have you visited here?
So I've been to Florida a bunch of times. I've been in New York. Went to Washington D.C.
Mm,
Went out to Vegas. So places like that. It's the
the
middle part
big,
that I haven't been to.
yeah, the big, yeah. You flew over like you skipped over all the like other little states. But yeah, you hit the big states like obviously Las Vegas and New York, Washington. Washington's a great place to go as a tourist because they have a lot of interesting things there.
Oh, it
I
was
would never want
incredible.
to.
Yeah, like to
Yeah.
walk past the White House, like
Yep.
the Washington Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, all these
Hmm.
places that you've seen on a million different movies, and like to
Right.
be there and walk amongst it, it
The
was
history.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. Okay, so I've asked you that. I'm sort of trying to go through. Oh, so your editing thing that happened yesterday when your Windows, I think it was yesterday when your Windows updated and shut you off.
Yeah.
So one thing that's important. Well, I'm surprised your program doesn't have an autosave feature.
It does, and this is the weird thing because I was like, it's fine. Like it shut down
Nah, it'll be
unexpectedly.
fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine. And then I opened it up, and it was like, "Do you want to restore like the autosave project?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." Clicked on OK, and then it just came up with an error saying like couldn't load the autosave
Oh,
file, and I was like, "Oh, fuck!" Like, I
oh,
mean,
geez.
it was fine. Like to be fair, I still had the audio and all that stuff. I just I missed out probably on about an hour of work,
It's still a
which
pain in
was
the ass though when that happens. You just I it's happened to me many times. You kick yourself. You would think being people that work with technology, we would know. Just we need to just auto save like every minute or two or five. But
mhm.
no. Yeah, it's that sucks. That's terrible. Which video were you working on or is it a secret?
No, it was just the one I did for It's a Wonderful Life,
Oh,
that
okay, the one that
review.
went up the other day. Okay. Yeah, I've never
Yeah.
seen that movie. I
Oh,
think I'll just
you should genuinely see it. Like there's nobody I think on this earth that could watch that and not feel better when they've seen it.
yeah. I've heard a lot of things about it. There's so many films that I haven't seen that like everybody else in the whole world has seen, but I haven't just because I'm not typically I know it's a feel good type of movie and it's also very dramatic. I think I understand what the character's going through. Isn't he doesn't he want to commit suicide at the beginning or something like that and
Yeah.
yeah,
So you get to see like the course of his life. Like
right.
essentially, he started out as a really like young, ambitious guy, like eager to get away from his little. He lives in like small town America where he's a million miles away from anywhere interesting, and he's eager to get out into the world and become like a famous architect and travel the world and all that. And every time he's about to leave, like something goes wrong in his life and he's forced to stay behind and
Mm,
take over the family business. And so he ends up becoming like kind of a cynical, like jaded sort of guy who's quite pissed off that he's had so many like disappointments in life.
yeah.
And then it all kind of unravels for him on Christmas Eve, where his uncle loses all the company's money and he's going to go bankrupt and go to jail, and that's when he thinks about ending it.
Oh,
And
that's
then
why.
but then he gets an opportunity to see what the world would have been like if he'd never existed in the first place, and so he realizes that he's helped a great number of people over the years, and yeah. As the title says, he really has lived a wonderful life. He just didn't quite realize it.
Right. Well, I think that's probably true for a lot of people. You get so caught up in things going on, you don't step back a bit and realize all the blessings that you do have in life and what there is around you to be grateful for. So
Mm.
it's a very easy thing to do. It kind of sounds to me like it's similar to Christmas Carol type of thing.
In a way, yes. And it's one of those old fashioned movies. Like it's James Stewart, and it's made in
Yeah.
the 1940s. Like it's
Yeah.
older than my parents, but um,
Yeah.
they don't make films like that anymore. And I think,
No.
as I said in my video review, like it's probably quite easy to point at movies like that and say, oh, they're so sentimental and old fashioned. But I think just once in a while, it's okay to just enjoy something like that and like put away your cynical hat for a couple of hours and just appreciate a movie like
Yeah.
that.
Maybe I'll check it out sometime. We'll
Yeah.
see. I don't know. I'm not always in the mood for a black and white. Do they have a color version of it?
I think they did. I
Oh,
think
did it?
they did colorize it. I'm not sure if it's an
Okay.
improvement or not, but
Oh
yeah.
well, okay, it might not be, but whatever. I think one of my favorite James Stewart movies was well, he was in Vertigo, an Alfred Hitchcock movie.
Yes.
And also I really liked him. I think wait a minute. I think he was in Anatomy of a Murder. Was that him in there? Who's the lawyer?
Man, you're
Oh,
asking. He might have been. He had a very good like everyman quality about him
yeah.
as an
Yeah.
actor. And
Yeah, he did.
one of the things I didn't know until I did some research for the video is like he gave up acting to serve in World War II, and he was a bomber pilot.
Yeah.
And when he came back to do that movie, he was still suffering from PTSD from his experiences, and he kind of channeled some of that into his performances. Like there's a few scenes where
Right.
his character breaks down, and I think apparently he wasn't really acting there. So
Okay, I didn't realize that about the PTSD, but I mean that does make sense. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, he was yeah, very prolific actor. But anyway, so okay, what else was I going to ask you? Oh, you mentioned dog soldiers
yes,
in your interview with the Okon brothers, and you made some sort of comment about how like probably nobody's heard of it or you guys have never heard of it, but I totally have. I love that movie. That's
yeah,
such a good, that's such a fun movie. Like it's like one of my favorite werewolf movies. I think um,
yes.
it really
It's just it's that great balance of like it's quite gory and
yeah
there's good fight scenes in it, but it's funny. The
yeah
dialogue is sharp as a razor. It's
yeah.
brilliantly written, and just a really fun film that never lets up. There's never like a lag in it. It never feels like a
Mm-mm.
scene is wasted. Yeah, it's one of those films I just have an absolute blast with, and
Oh yeah.
I did a review of it just
Oh, did
as
you?
yeah, like way back before I kind of became
Oh.
the drinker. So
Oh,
it's
before you changed your voice and everything, because I've looked at some of your older videos and you like, it's like that doesn't even sound like him.
yeah, I'm like super polite in them and just yeah, totally
Right,
different person.
right. Well, the drinker is so much more fun to listen to. Not that the others are bad, but you've added that little spark to it that makes it a lot of fun to listen
I think
to.
that's what yeah, I think that's what you need because a lot of the time when you're getting into the nitty gritty of character writing or plot structure, all that sort of stuff with movies, it can be kind of dry and technical and it's not that engaging. And so
Hmm.
if you've got a way to liven it up a little and throw some humor in there, man, it makes the whole thing so much easier to get across.
Well, how hard did you have to craft the character of the drinker, or did it just come naturally to you? And when did you decide to let it come out that way? Because I don't know which one was your first drinker video. Was it
I
the Game
think
of Thrones one?
no, it was before that even. I think it was about Captain Marvel.
Oh,
Um,
really? I remember. I saw that video. That
Yeah,
one
that
is
was the first one. And I don't even know why I did it at the time, particularly. It just seemed like an idea. And it almost like in that video, like because it suddenly took off and I went from having 300 subscribers to having like 10,000 in the space of a few days.
yeah,
It was like, okay, wow, there's something about this that's working. And
yeah,
it just kind of arrived fully formed, like almost straight away. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with that. And how I wanted to present it, and then I've added things to it over the months or the past year, like bits of lore to the drinker's life, and it's it's
yeah.
just great fun.
So the Game of Thrones one, that was not the one that made things take off. It was Captain Marvel.
Yeah, exactly. The Game of
Okay,
Thrones one just kind of kept the momentum going because
right.
I'd done Captain Marvel and I think I'd done a few other like Star Wars related things. And I was starting to think like, okay, so what do I talk about now? Like what movies can I start reviewing? And then almost like that, like Game of Thrones just kind of fell into my lap. And I did a review on that. Again, it just took off massively. And I thought,
Yeah.
oh, okay, right, this is something that people are really connecting with. And it's something I really care about because it was a show I loved. And then to see it
Same.
falling apart like that, it was just
Oh,
heartbreaking. And the only way I could get it out was to just absolutely tear into it. And
yeah.
man, that was some of the most like rapid videos that I've put together because
Oh, yeah, because it was
we would get we'd get Game of Thrones, but I think in the UK we'd get it slightly behind you guys because we're in a different time zone. And
wait, really? You wouldn't get it like
well, I mean, we're ahead of
ahead
you,
of
so
us?
we'd get it, but it would be on at like 3 in the morning or something for us. And so
Oh.
Yeah, I would. No, I'm not going to sit up in the
I
middle of the night
see.
and watch it.
Right. So they don't play it your local time. They play when they put it up 9 p.m. Eastern.
You guys get priority. So it's played at your local time, like 9 p.m. or whatever it'll be. So 9 p.m.
Hmm.
for you will be like 1 a.m. for us, and so that's when we get it on. And it's, you could stay up till that time if you wanted to, but I wouldn't be much good for writing a review. So I would watch it
No.
the following day, and then it'd be like, right, it's a race against time to get my review up before everyone else has done the same thing. And so,
Right. You're really
that's
scrambling then. Plus, you have to not only do you have to watch it, but you have to analyze it. You got to think about what's wrong with it, and there was so much wrong with it.
yes,
Have you seen the picture? I don't know if you have. This was mostly on Facebook. I saw it. It was like a depiction of Game of Thrones, and it was a drawing of a horse.
yeah, yeah. It's like this is season one, and it's like detailed, and then by season eight,
Beautiful.
it's just like a stick man.
Right, it's a stick figure with like twigs, legs, or whatever. But and you know when it started to go off kilter was when they ran out of material. When they
Yeah,
got past the books, and the season or two maybe after that, it wasn't horrible, but you could tell it was getting a little shaky because all they had was the bare bones like outline that George R. R. Martin had given to them. And then I I get so mad thinking about that show because that went from being one of my favorite shows ever to just I absolutely hate it now. I don't even want to watch it anymore. I'm so mad at what they did with
yeah.
those characters.
The the lure of Game of Thrones in the early seasons was this feeling that the show was smarter than we were as viewers. They
Yeah.
had a really strong plan, and it was going to do something mind-blowing by the end. It was all building up to something great.
Hmm.
And then you had that confidence in the writers, and it was great because you could just relax into it and just enjoy all the great stuff as it happened. And then by the time you get to season 7 and then 8, and it was already falling apart in season 7 completely. Like it was all
Hmm.
given way to big, set piece battles and spectacle rather than like the plotting and the intrigue of the early
Right.
seasons. By the time you get to the end, you realize like, yeah, they didn't have a plan, and they didn't have anything great to build it up to. It's just total amateur hour. And all your confidence in it goes, and
Yeah.
it taints all the seasons that came before it.
That's exactly right. So that's why I'm not interested to ever see it again because all I can think of if I were to start watching it over again is where it ended up. And it was just such a huge disappointment. The whole thing, you said exactly what I actually was saying myself about the buildup of Jon Snow and the showdown with the Night King. And then it's little stinking Arya that comes in. I don't, that makes no sense at all. None.
Mm.
You find out nothing really about, you think there's going to be some big reveal about Bran and the Night King and what's that, what is all that about? And it's just over and done. I was just so huge, like my blood pressure starts rising when I talk about it because it was just like it went from being such a great story to such a disappointment. I know for a lot of people it was like that, and I'm telling you stuff you already have thought about and know anyway. But I vent. I tend to
Yeah,
vent about things like that.
it's cathartic though, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I can feel it my blood pressure because I get so mad when things aren't written good,
Mm.
especially when
Yeah.
it started off. So it's like it's one thing for something to start off a little shaky and be kind of weak and not all that interesting, but then it can get better, you know. Then that's what you remember. Okay, well, if you can make it through the first few episodes or the first season, it gets really, really good after that. But for it to go the other way is just a huge disappointment. So,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
I'll stop talking about Game of Thrones. Mad about that. I was going to ask you, what do you think is your most? Number one, have you ever heard of Remo Williams, the movie?
No, I haven't, I'm afraid.
Okay, so that was I kind of put that under an underappreciated action type movie, and I was going to ask you, what do you think is one of the most underappreciated action or horror or thriller type movies? You should watch Remo Williams. It's fun film
Okay.
from the 80s. So
Okay.
so what
Uh,
what what would be like? You can break it down by genre if you want to. I know I'm asking you to think off the top of your head, and there's so many different movies to think about.
hmm.
But
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of horror movies, like Dog Soldiers was definitely an underappreciated one that
Yeah,
I was really happy to call attention to. Just a really fun movie.
yeah,
In terms of action films, man, there's so many that I've like talked about that are just those well-known kind of mainstream ones, like where I've done
right.
live streams. We've talked about things like Predator or
Mhm.
Commando or all those great like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies from back in the
Right,
day, or Stallone. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a really like an action movie that I feel is underappreciated. Most of the ones I like are kind of well known, so I don't know if
right.
I'm a bit too mainstream on that one.
Well, maybe after you see Remo Williams, maybe I don't know. You may read it and tear it apart and think it's absolutely ridiculous, but I'm curious to know what you think about it if you ever happen to check it out. It was just I think it was from I'm pretty sure it was from the 80s.
Okay.
It's about this guy, he's a cop, and something happens to him. His face gets messed up. They basically make him a new face. I think Fred Ward plays the main character. And so then they put him in this program or this type of thing where he's being trained by this some sort of martial arts dude, and he basically goes on like a mission or what that type of film. But it's
Hmm.
pretty. I don't know. I have a soft spot in my heart for it. I always have, and it doesn't seem like it's very well known. So obviously, it's not if you haven't heard of it because you're into movies and everything too. So,
Yeah,
but
I think this is something that happens every time I do a stream where I'll get questions like, "Oh, what did you think of this movie or that movie?" And
you're like,
you
what?
know, I think yeah, I think sometimes there's an assumption that like you've seen like every film ever, and it's like,
Well, no, I get. I mean, I've seen a lot of movies, but I know that there's some because I watch movies all the time. I have movies playing while I'm working, and I try to do some movie reviews. I watch advanced screenings, so I can do reviews and things like that. But sometimes there's things I've never heard of. But I guess I just assumed that maybe you would have heard of it because it's an action type movie from the 80s, but I don't think it got a huge amount of traction. Um,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's so fun. It's a sort of a guilty pleasure type fun film. I love that you hate Midsummer.
Oh, good, yeah. I got a lot of stick for that review actually. Like, of all the
Well,
things I've done.
yeah, yeah, I understand there were some people that disagreed with you about that, but you put into words again exactly why I hated that movie. It was so insane, and I didn't like the other movie that guy did. I don't know if you saw it or not. Hereditary.
Oh, Hereditary, yeah, yeah.
Did you like that?
I mean, it was better than Midsummer, but yeah, I'm not a huge
Marginally.
Ari Aster fan,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So yeah, I think with that film, um, yeah, the people praise it so much because they're like, oh, it's a great allegory for the breakup of a relationship and all
Hmm.
that. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but it's not some crazy art house flick where everything is symbolic and none of it's actually happening. Like it's presented very much like this is stuff which is happening to real people in the real world.
Right.
And I just couldn't buy into it. Like it felt really unearned. The characters were really cheaply dealt with. The conflict wasn't well handled. It wasn't scary in the slightest, which is kind of a prerequisite for a horror movie for me. And I don't
Exactly.
know if it was just mismarketed or something, but yeah, I was not impressed with it at all.
Well, it's like I guess he's trying to make a cerebral horror movie or something, which to me makes it seem kind of pretentious. And I just couldn't connect. Now, well, I'm talking actually about both movies. I couldn't connect with the characters, especially the characters in Midsommar. The main character, I couldn't stand her. She was
Yeah, yeah.
annoying.
It's
And
it's a strange one because the movie wants you to hate her boyfriend for being selfish and wanting to leave her, and like the more I thought about it, the more I was like, no, that's really unfair. Like he right at the start of the movie, he wanted to break up with her, and then she
mhm,
suffers a family tragedy, so it's not appropriate for him to do it, and so he sticks with her for like at least 6 months, if not
yep,
more, like with a person that he doesn't care about anymore, doesn't love, but he does it out of like respect and loyalty.
mhm.
And then he tries to just get on this like trip with his buddies, like for a couple of days away, and like she even has to go on that with him. And
I
like,
know, I
I
know. It's
just
like,
I
oh,
felt really sorry for him. I was like, oh man, you can feel how like pissed off he would be and how
yeah.
dejected. It's like,
And
oh,
he
you're
was trying to
coming,
be
really?
nice, and no, I that's true. I felt the same way because I felt like she was. I tried to identify with her a little bit because of the grief she was going through, but after a while, it wears thin, and I find myself not identifying with someone like her, and I feel sorry for the guy that was sticking around with her, and the whole just in order for me to like a book or a movie or a show, I have to find something about the MC that I actually like, and there was nothing with her.
Yeah,
And
I
then
was I was struggling. Like you say that you can get it because she is a character that's grieving. That grief is a major part of her arc. But I think when you're at that point where it's like 6 months or a year later, like you kind of have to move on eventually and start to
yeah,
rebuild your life. And it's like she just didn't. Like it felt like she was just wallowing in grief,
no,
and
yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of puts me off a character. So
she was stuck,
um,
and it gets old. Okay, well, thank you so much, Will. This was fun, and I look forward to watching more of your content and checking out more of your books.
all
So,
right, no problem at all.
hey, have a good weekend. All right.
All right, likewise.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye now.